Yahoo Prof here, and if I'm all full of hair, which I am, you can thank the Granny Cat Gertrude for that, because in the middle of doing the video on the new Basic 4 from Everyday Chaos, which is this nice, I want to call it sort of, pinstripes go this way. What's the other way? I don't know. Pen, she decided she needed some Gertrude time on my shoulder and was purring up a storm. So I gotta get these put away a little bit here. I do need to take a thumbnail still, but we'll do that after this video. And we have a big old stack of packages. One of the things is not in a package. Yeah, I've also been trying to put some mice away. So if you guys are interested in computer mice, as always, I have a fair bit of a collection and have been reviewing them for over a decade now. I'd argue we're probably getting on to 2 decades now. Argue? No, I'm pretty sure. It's been a hot minute, let's put it that way. And I am looking for models I don't have, and especially older ones. You know, like your like before PC gaming had its renaissance, you know, in recent years. I say recent years as in like the past decade or so. Oh, not a decade or so, but you know, around that era. Because for a while there, it was really dying out. You know, some of the comments were like, no, it really. Even I was not playing too many PC games, to be truthful. I even got out of, I wouldn't say out of gaming, but, you know, less common for me to do as a pastime. I think we're going to go with these two. I think those are related. What is this one? Okay. This is something we can hit up. Club 3D. If you guys need a quality DisplayPort cable, which you all do, if you have a monitor, do not trust what comes in the box. They will ship you the cheapest cable that functions. If your monitor is still at VGA, you would only get a VGA cable in the box. I have Asus DisplayPort that require these DisplayPort 1.4 cables, right? Because they are 4K 144 Hz HDR 10-bit. So they require these. They don't ship in the box. So, same thing. If you need, you're like, oh, HDMI 2.0, HDMI 2.1. That is not how HDMI cables are done spec-wise. They are done with, what is it? It's just HDMI cable, I think. But then there's high speed. That did everything up to 4K 30. Most of you are using those for 1080p 60. And then there's ultra high speed. That's what covers HDMI 2.0 and 2.1. And it should say like HDMI ultra high speed certified. Most of the cables out there that say they do like all these gigabits a second and HDR and yada yada yada, unless they say ultra high speed certified, they aren't. Same thing with this. This is DisplayPort TM. Supports this. That's the important part right there. VESA certified. Doesn't matter if it's braided. Doesn't matter if it's the chonkiest gauge ever. Doesn't matter if it's a fancy custom one. That's what things care about. Certification. Same thing with the HDMI. That ultra high speed certified. That is what matters. That's how like Belkin can make a super thin one. Theirs is only 6 foot long. That's what shipped with the Apple TV. That's all you need. It's certified. That's what matters. They could make like there's like audiophile grade ones they were selling at Best Buy. Those weren't like they claimed it could do the bit depth. What matters though is that it got certified. So, and these are not that expensive. My recommendation is Club 3D. Sabrent has some good ones. Actually, Best Buy's, though they're high-end brand that replaced Monster, which I'm forgetting off the top of my head, doesn't have certified cables. They're, I don't think it's Insignia, but it might be like the Best Buy Basics or whatever. They even have a ultra high-speed certified HDMI. Now, finding an HDMI 1.4, you're probably not going to find that at the local shop. I'm sorry to tell you. And from a we sincerely recognize blah 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 blah. Oh, that's just like an insert telling you to if you need assistance to reach out to them. Here, just gobble. I've just never seen that in their box before. Oh, I'm not gonna peel this open, but it is just a quality cable. Simple as that. And I always keep one. You're like, why if you always have one for all your monitors? Well, I always have an extra. I always have one, and this is what comes from even prior to my on-site support days. I would always keep one in my bag, like an extra HDMI, another extra display port. Usually it would be like a good enough one. But just because like you'd go someplace and like you want to hook up your laptop and they can't, or somebody would be struggling, they're like, oh, I don't know if my adapter cable works, and you just have it so you can fix the problem. As soon as I went on site, I basically always kept a brand new one of those in my bag and would use them for my own stuff. And then if a customer needed it, you just give them the cable and be like, pay up and I'll order another one off Amazon. Or at that point, it got to the point where I would keep a second one in the car because I might be going later that day to another client and need another one. On the note of that, though, just because that happened to come in this similar Amazon order, what do we have here? Brown. I'm sure all you recognize that. You're like, more Noctua? Didn't you just buy Noctua? Yeah, in fact, I still have not put the packaging away because life. Let's just put it that way. And how do you know I haven't put the packaging away? Look at that dust. Tasty. Now, what's the difference? That is NF-A12x25 G2, right? And that's a 2-pack. NF-A14, or sorry, not A14, A12x25. So these, I really should clarify on, not sponsored. Bought these on Amazon. You saw them come out of the Amazon box. And you're like, why are you saying they're not sponsored? Because Noctua has sponsored and helped me out with my builds before. In this case, they dropped and I bought. I didn't wait because I didn't need that many. And yes, this 2-pack is a little squished. But I bet we're all, yep, we're all in there. And you're like, what do you mean you're sponsored? This was quite a while ago. And that's just how I realize I'm getting old and stuff like that. Or time passes. I shouldn't say necessarily I'm getting old. I'm not old compared to many out there. You're like, you're not old, you're not better. Yeah. It is kind of a thing when I think about that. Like, if any of you remember the SteelSeries Wow mouse, that was after they bought a company that made like keyboards with interchangeable. You didn't change, like, you changed the whole keys out, like the whole key structure, and they had layouts for specific games. Well, they bought that company and they made their WoW mouse, which was like their first MMO mouse, like the original. That was one of the first, I don't want to say it was the first, but that was one of the ones I clearly remember being like one of the first, if not the first, to have a review out on the internet for. That's 2007, 2008, I want to say. Might be at the latest 2009. And then I ended up reviewing a lot of stuff for SteelSeries back then because they do have a local office Chicago, local-ish, I guess. And I, struck up a decent rapport with them. Like I part of like the original Kana, because I loved the Akari laser, and Akari optical back in the day. Like, and what they thought, not what they thought, but like their mindset behind designing those. I really appreciate it. Like their products, they had some of the only headsets that had decent anything. The SteelSeries 5H V2 back then was the headset. Was it the most durable thing? No. Was it the best? Nope. And then there was the Siberias, which had a declippable mic. Those were like hot stuff, but when the Siberia 2 dropped, like everything. Crazy, crushed it. They also were one of the few that actually had decent mics on their headsets. And when I say decent, you're like, oh, they sound like crap nowadays. Yeah, back in that was a good mic back then. Also, they were one of the few that didn't require mic boost on the microphone, because they had a higher quality or better paired microphone. Sometimes that's not even like higher quality isn't even a thing. It's just better paired for the application, if that makes sense. So it's been a hot minute since I've been reviewing, mice and peripherals, especially in the gaming area. As for fans, the reason why I said like Noctua did not sponsor this is the first generation of the NF-A12x25. I got a case of them, if you look back, and I did pay for them, but I got a deal on them. I don't even remember what it was. But for my main build Anthrax, that was in my Case Labs case. Now, probably triggered some sort of thing that's going to trip my video because I said that. But that's what my main desktop has always been called. I don't know, it was something unique. You got to remember when you could probably figure out when I lived through and that sort of stuff. There were a lot of scares regarding that. So it was a hot topic. That came up, and I'm like, oh, I need something cool to call it. And this is the era of, like, the more X's, the better. You put X in front and after your username. We all did it. I totally did. The Prophecist used to be XX, lowercase x, uppercase X, squiggly bracket, the Prophecist, the squiggly bracket, uppercase X, lowercase x, period, or whatever. Check out my guy online profile, sort of stuff. And on, what was that, version 8 or 9? Where I built it in, I'm trying to remember, because we're on 10 Lite now. Because 10 was going to be a complete, not even complete rebuild. All the RMA parts had come back. It must have been Anthrax 9 that was in the Case Labs case then. I think 7 was in the Nanoxia case. Then I moved that hardware into the Case Labs. And then I rebuilt it completely in the Case Labs for 9. Noctua, I was like, hey guys, really like your fan, and you guys even shared and featured my Nanoxia build in the Nanoxia, was it Deep Silence 6? That was featured actually in a number of places, in marketing material, I don't know that I ever made it to a magazine. I'm trying to think. Either way, that was decently featured. I was like, hey, I'm going to be doing a new version of that. I want to use your new fans. Like, I literally actually I had moved the NF-F12s from the Nanoxia case into my Case Labs case. And I even had bought 3 or 4 brand new ones because I needed like that many more to like fill it out. And then they just announced, and not like they announced the availability of the NF-A12x25 originals. And I'm like, hey, I've been building my build. Here's my that was back when I was on LTT forum. I was sharing a bit more there. Then I'm still on Twitter mostly. You guys can also find a lot of it on the Discord. Lately with life, don't have time to even post on and keep everything up on that. Mostly lately it's just like reposting news articles with my comments and maybe a lot of pictures don't even go up on social media because ever since we went away, it became X. I want to throw up saying that. People have fractured off. And, you know, some people are on Blue Sky, some people are on Threads, some people just stopped. You know, they took that as an excuse to stop. So, like, you know, I don't do as much as I used to. But back then, you know, actively doing this stuff, and they were willing to help out with it. So that's what I'm saying. Like, previously, they had sent me like a case, like, you know, we worked out a deal on a case of them for that build. And they'd helped out there. They've also helped out with other builds in the past when I needed specific stuff that's been out of stock, or they've sent out when they've had new thermal paste, just stuff like that. You know, we've had a rapport. Let's put it that way. This case, just like a lot of the other, I'm not going to say I'm not going to take stuff for review anymore, but I don't like that pressure personally. And you're like, oh, but like getting free stuff and blah, blah. I'm a little tiny guy. I make these videos for fun. Sometimes I don't make videos for 2 weeks. Sometimes I make 20 videos in a week. That's why having any sort of timeline is like, and then like some of these smaller brands now that have reached out to do stuff, they've been like, oh, well, you didn't do it the way that we wanted and it didn't perform as good as we expected. And I'm like, I did it for free. You sent me the free item. In some case, I even sent the item back. Like, I just don't want to deal with that. Like, they want my input, but they don't, like, when it doesn't, like, they want my review input, but when it doesn't have enough feedback, they don't like it now. Whatever. So I just, some of mice brands I might, you know, because like those have been getting expensive, especially since I can't get them discounted anymore. But Noctua, I needed 3 of these. Let's get back on track here. I needed 3 NF-A12x25s, so I bought them. They just came out instantly when they dropped, because last time when the A14s came out, I had to wait for a restock, if I recall correctly. And for some of our stuff, like initially, boom, gone, sold out. These were not cheap. Like I can't check my phone because we're on my phone, but like not cheap. I want to say the NF-A12x25s were $30 a fan. The NF-F12s were $25 a fan. Roughly, you might have been able to get them as low as 20 at some point. Let's check Amazon here. Not that one. Click on a thing, go on the thing. Now, this may have something to do with tariffs, because... No, don't make sure it's me. Nope, don't make sure it's me. I hate passkeys, guys, for those wondering. I have two-step. Yep. Here's why I bought these, and I bought them, literally, I was up, they released it, I think their time, like Austrian time, or maybe they did it in, you know, 12 o'clock West Coast time or 12 o'clock East Coast time. I don't know. I saw the email come in, and either I was sitting in bed right over there, and I pounced, or I was just getting off work. This is why I ordered immediately, because I needed 3 of them, and what does it say right there? Currently unavailable. Let's see with their dual pack. Dual pack, are you in stock? Currently unavailable. We got her. So that is exactly why. That is exactly why I hopped on those, because lately with all of Noctua's stuff, it has sold out basically as soon as it comes out, and I knew I needed 3 of these. You're like, how do you know you need 3 of these? Well, Chibi PC is being rebuilt in a Lianli T150. Those are no longer made. I bought them. I had to buy them used on... You said them? Yes. I'm taking 2 and putting them together to make the one I want. And that's getting rebuilt in there, because I'm no longer using the TU200, which, though, was a great case. Fitting modern, especially graphics cards, in a TU200 is oof. It's a bit of a push. So I'm going in there. I need 2 for that. One of which is going on the front of the D15 Gen 2, and you're like, well, that D15 Gen 2 should have. This is an A15 Gen 1 here, but it should have one of those guys, but the Gen 2 version. Yep. With the size of a TU150, it does not fit on there. With non-low profile RAM, and I'm not saying standard height RAM that's this tall that people call low profile. You would need truly low profile RAM to make it work. And I don't know that they make that in DDR4, and you're like, DDR4? Yeah, Cheaty PC is still running on a B350 motherboard with a 5800X3D. So take that. Yeah, that's first gen Ryzen motherboard. Flare X, which is second gen RAM. That's why it's only 2933, because they couldn't do 32 gigs and 2 sticks at 3200, which was the more optimal for second gen Ryzen. For 32 gigs, you can only do 2933 if you only did 2 sticks. But that's still my secondary system. 5800X3D. It's got a 3070, now it's 3060 Ti. Because Squares actually has a 3070 now. But here we go. This is what I wanted to show you. $35 for a single fan. So remember, F12 was about 25. A12 by 25 was 30. And A12 by 25 Gen 2, $35. Or 65 if you want a 2-pack. So you get $5 off because you're buying 2 of them. But keep that in mind. Prices keep going up. And no, if you have existing Noctua fans that work, unless you need more of them and you can't get them anymore for a reasonable price, like say if you have 3 and you need 5 total, depending on how much money you have and that sort of stuff, do you buy all 5 new ones? I might argue you do. Or if you can manage it with like 3 intakes of new ones and 2 old ones, Noctuas will outlast their warranty. I can tell you that. I've had 1 die ever, I think. We did have some that turned pink. I still have to make that video with Frozen Slate. Not only did Noctua want to know what happened to those, they replaced them, paid to replace components that we think made them pink, paid for shipping to ship those, both the fans and the, they were LED strips, they were white LED strips, directly to their R&D facility in Austria. So yeah, so that may have some of the reason why the tan color changed at one point, was because they shipped, I believe, from Taiwan to China, and you're like, oh, isn't that the wrong way? We want to be out of China now. Yeah, that was before this whole mess. And part of the reason might be because of potentially us. Yeah. So there's a little story for you. I want to do the full one at some point, and they gave me full permission because I asked them, like, once we got in that sent, they're like, hey, do you have any problem with me covering this? Because, like, I think you guys handled it really, really well. And you're like, oh, you didn't have to ask. Why you asked? It was your fans. It was your problem. You should cover it. Hey, I'm not saying I wouldn't have covered it if they said no, but if you can get permission and they're like, yes, you can then include in the story, like, hey, they said yes, which shows that they're a good company because they don't want to, like, hide, you know, like, they didn't have me sign an NDA or anything like that. You know what I mean? So Noctua has been great. Here, I lost my second set of brackets for this guy. It is over 10 years old. This is a U14S that I bought for my server. It is going right back in another server. This was in Square's system until he got my D15S, which was in my previous server. Now this is going back in my server. I no longer have, because of the amount of times that this has changed hands, I have the receipt and everything, I no longer have the second fan brackets. You saw the fan that goes on here over there. It's a D15S. Here, I obviously have fan brackets for this, right? They're on the fan. They kind of stay there, especially with the grill on it. I did not have the secondary, the backside, because that U14S can do push-pull. What do? the other thing is I reach out to them, and on the same thing, I'm asking about the D15 Gen 2 and showing them where it's not clearing. And I'm like, just a heads up, this is not me saying you did a bad job, whatevering. I knew that I could only fit the middle fan in going into this. But I tested, and I can fit a 120. And the D15 and D15S and D15 Gen 2, as you saw over there, use their A15 fan, which is actually like a round frame fan. The clip positions are actually at 120 millimeter. What that means if you don't have enough clearance, you can use a 120 millimeter fan. Well, there's enough for the U14S. Turns out, if you want to put a 120 millimeter fan on a D15 Gen 2, you need the same clips as the one that put the second fan on the U14S. So what do they send me? They don't send me even one set of clips. Nope, they sent me a second set of clips for the front fan on the D15 Gen 2, so I can mount a 120 millimeter fan, right? Not only do they do that, they send me 2 more sets. Then, to make sure I'm all good, because remember, I had the U14S, and I'm like, you know, I'm going to put that second fan on there, yada yada, but I can't find my clips. They're like, oh, since you can't find your clips, you know what? You probably also don't know where it's located. The increased fan bumpers for the pull fan, if you see, these are much thicker. You can see there's extra thickness on there for the, because normally it would just be this bottom lip, for the rear fan on the U14S. So, and because they're like, oh, you lost those, you probably don't have these, we just included a kit for you. Boom. Right? At the same time, I said also I needed the mounting plate, because obviously a U14S doesn't come with an AM5 mounting plate, right? Like why would it? This was when it used to be on a when I say originally on a 1366 socket, then a 2011 socket, then a 2011-3 socket, right? So those are the HDT Intel ones. Those are all the same. And they sent me a bracket for that, all in this. You know how much it costs? Nothing to me. 0. Right? And you're like, oh, but that's all in the support. Yeah. The fact, though, that they worked with me, they didn't tell me like, oh, you can't put the 120 millimeter on the front. They're like, oh, be aware before you do this. They did clarify, because they had a caveat on there, like, you cannot expect the performance that we said on the D15 Gen 2 if you put a 120 millimeter on the front, because we spec'd it with the A15 by 25 Gen 2. You know, you're not going to get as good performance. And I'm like, yep, that's understandable. I only have it on this CPU. I knew this going in, but I chose to buy that cooler and put it in this case, right? But they warned me about that, right? But the fact that they also, like, seriously, I have had that U14S for, I think it's like 10.5 years now, right? And they sent me brackets, right? Fan mounting brackets, because I actually offered to buy them. Like, I'm like, hey, I cannot find these, right? Where can I buy them? And they're like, you don't have to. And then they sent these over as well. So I'm pumped. That is great service. Like I said, I also have the bracket because it's going on an AM4 board. Sorry, I might have said AM5 earlier. It's a I think a 3900X is what's in that motherboard. Either way, that mounting bracket did not exist for the U14S when it came out, right? And that all came free of charge. Came here really quickly, direct from Austria, like just yeah, couldn't have had better service. Like, you know, they helped me out. They're like, oh, is there really no way to do clearance? And I'm like, yeah, here's where I'm running into an issue. I don't see it. You know, and like I said, it's been, you know, not only did they support me doing a thing that they don't like recommend necessarily, they also supported a product that is more than 10 years old that I have had for 10 years. Like, as in the U14S came out before I bought it because I just didn't have a need for a U14S. Then I did, bought it, you know, and I've had it for, like I said, I think 10.5 years. And they sent me parts for it at no cost. So when they say, like, I know Linus did a video on, like, he had they got the original U12, I believe. And they still make a bracket that works with the original U12. You do have to change out, I think, on that one, the plate that's on the cooler so that it actually can mount to their Secure Firm 2, because they had older mounting brackets back then. Yeah, it's legit. I mean, like, I can't go back that far, but I have the U14S, which is the revised version of it. And they supported me. Great support, too, as always. So we've gone off a bit off track, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, why do I buy their products? It's not because they sent to me. I reached out to them back when I was doing that build to being like, hey, I already had a case full of your fans. I even bought some more to put in here, but I saw you come out with the new ones. I would like to feature those in my build. Cool? And they're like, hell yeah. We've seen your build. And I'm like, oh, it always feels good when, like, you're talking to them and they're like, yeah, we actually know what you're talking about, which is awesome. Feels good, you know. And so I knew I wanted the G2. I temporarily had some older, what is it? It's like Redux fans. Yeah, I don't know where my other Redux fan went. Oh, here. There you go. These guys were temporarily mounted in the front of the TU-150. It's a Lianli TU-150. It's got a handle on the top. Yeah, somebody actually spent some good money. This was a coworker at Best Buy. His all-in-one cooler died, and I happened to have an iron one. I gave them to him. And he's like, oh, well, we had to take these out to fit it. Do you want them? Like, sure. I took that as payment. Still have them because Noctua fans are nice. But yeah, these are currently in, well, one of these now, there were two, are in Chibi PC as the intake to the case, and this one I think was the one that was on the front of, no, this, well, I don't know where this was. Maybe it was planned to go on the front of the D15 Gen 2, but I didn't have the brackets because you just saw them in frame. So they came in now. This is what's going in there, and that is why I bought a push-pull set. Now, we're not doing push-pull in the traditional sense that they would think about it as, because they would say push-pull in relation to a cooler. Like, you'd put one on the front, one on the back, or if you're doing the front of the case, you would put one on the top, one on the bottom, right? So why does that matter? It's because they offset them. In this case, they offset them by 50 RPM. I want to say the A14 was less. I don't want to flip this over because I have, yeah, they did 25. So they doubled it. My guess is they found out that either with the smaller size, like these are only 120s, or that the 25 RPM difference between the two fans in here was not enough. I don't know if that's because just experience with the A14s, like, oh, we should have done it 50 RPM, or because these went to the smaller frames, they have to vary them more, right? Because on the bigger fans, you need less RPMs to do the same, like, flow pattern and that sort of stuff. Also, even though these look very, very similar, and they used a lot of the same, like, this, they used the stuff they learned on the second gen A14s, because originally the second gen A14 was going to be a scaled up A12 by 25, not Gen 2. Apparently, that did not work, and they redesigned it from the ground up, right? So then what they did is they took their learnings, because it took so long to come out with the A14 by 25, Gen 2, they learned enough, and then they backported that, what they learned, down to the A12 by 25. So I don't know if maybe they learned that maybe we should have done a 50 RPM difference, because there were some issues with the some noise, like rattly issues, which I still haven't done my warranty on. Not that mine rattles, but they give you some spacers to prevent rattling or something. I've still yet to claim that. I don't know if they found that the 25 RPM on the 140 was not enough for even on the 140s, or if they just found when they scaled this down, because already you need more RPMs on the 120 millimeter fan versus the 140, you had to vary them more. Like that's why there's a 50 RPM variance between these fans rather than the 25. So that is double, plus minus 50. The other ones were plus minus 25. G2 Performance, Plastic Babe, Sterox, that came out with their A12x25. They basically had to do LCP, Liquid Crystal Polymer. Sterox is a name brand one. They were, I want to say they were the first to put that in a fan. I may be wrong, but that was a big thing that even happened with the A12x25 Gen 1s, like the original version of this fan in here. They found out that they ended up not only having to do Sterox for the blades, which is what they want to do to save some money, but the whole frame. FD6 drive, Etiperf, centrifugal turbulence hub. I think they did an interview with one of the things saying like, oh, do these blades on here really do a lot? Nope. But the thought is, like, you could get away and not put them on there. Like, if you see, like, this design get pushed down to the Redux line, same thing with the flow acceleration channels. Like, do those do a full degree by themselves? No. But if they're going this far and making this much of a premium fan, they feel in order to be the best or better, generally the best is their previous fan, they need to really eke out every last % of performance that they can get out of it. So they're saying that improved noise normalized cooling performance, A12x25 Gen 2, they have at 36C, and the previous A12x25 they would have at 40C. And the A12x25 would have been 1800 RPM, and these are now 1750. You know, but there's that one that's plus minus 50 RPM. So, you know, it's basically comparable. I feel like the A12x25 went up in RPM from the F12. I might be wrong there. But often you can run these much lower than their actual. See, they're saying airflow to static pressure. Here we can zoom in on this guy here. That's their little graph of. Now, one thing to keep in mind, like if this graph is for Noctua, other brands will not measure this graph the same as Noctua will, right? So the comparability of them saying like, oh, we use this much millimeters of whatever, unless it's in like the exact same test, like they're in the same testing environment with the same tools, yada yada. It's not really comparable. That's why you have some third-party testing that you know, some places do. I know one of the guys that does like all these custom fan blades and stuff, he always used the A12x25, and then the Chromax one once that got the update. Though I think that one was harder to use because of how the blades were attached to the hub, so they couldn't like get them off as easily. But basically, in every point, basically what they're trying to say here is, in the curve, if we go more towards airflow, it's better than the Gen 1. If we go in air pressure, it's better. And then in the middle, it's obviously better. And that's noise normalized. So it was they already switched, because they used to have the F12 and the S12 where you had a static pressure and airflow and then prior to that they had the P12. Love me a P12. That's why the server that's getting here, there's some P14s that are now Redux. That prior to the A12x25, and I still have some 120 millimeter versions of that, was their kind of all around fan. I had a P12s and a lot of things, and I know Linus back in the day was very pro F12. To be truthful, because of how they work with those focused flow vanes on the back, they were actually noisier than they needed to be if you didn't put them in a spot where they had to focus the flow. You know, they were very much a radiator or heatsink focused fan. They also could do well in the front of your case. If you were back in the day, you would have had hard drive cages and that sort of stuff. It would have helped with that as well. But if you had them as a top exhaust, top or rear exhaust, or maybe a side panel intake, the S12 or S12A, I think at the time, would have probably been a much better fit. This is an S12 Redux right there. So let's see, it's a very different impeller that is airflow focused. But look at that tip gap. You would never want that much tip gap on a static pressure focused fan. But kind of with the A12x25, they went back to having one fan for everything that's kind of aimed at doing everything, rather than like this fan does airflow, that fan does air pressure, etc. I would say actually in the A14 they might have already done that. With that, I feel like the bigger fans you get, the more room you have. Maybe I'm wrong there. But let's finally get this open, and we'll take a crack here. This is the 2-pack. These boxes are really interesting. I've pulled them apart on stream before. They are one piece because it's raw. It's wrapped right here, and then this is cut out. They're one piece of cardboard that's wrapped all the way around. Like literally, it's just one piece here. See how that then folds in, wraps up, flips over, wraps back down. Kind of impressive, to be truthful. SSO2 bearing. They've been using that one for a hot minute. The motor, I think, was the thing that was definitely different. I don't know if it was different from the 814x25. Maybe it's a good thing I didn't throw this box out yet. Super torque. Yeah, so it's definitely different. This is super torque. See, I got a bunch of hardware in here I need to put away. That's super torque. Whereas this one is Eta-Perf motor. Now because, and this is exactly like it was on the D15 Gen 2, as well as the A14x25s. Those went in the server, by the way. Or sorry, not server, home theater PC. Front intake, boom boom, or actually exhaust. Sorry, I run that in reverse. So it's front exhaust, and then one on the heatsink underneath. So that's why I went with a 2-pack in that case to get the varied ones for the front. And then also, if one's normal and one's varied, then I can put the varied one right by the heatsink for the CPU, and then the CPU would have a normal one, like a standalone, like this guy. So that's kind of what I did there. That thing's dead silent. Those fans going up to the from the A14s to the A14x25 Gen 2s actually super helped. This guy, that's where this guy's headed, is in the rear intake. Yeah, I'm running that case in reverse because it is a home theater PC case, and it's in, I'm not going to call it like a home theater setup, but it's in like an IKEA thing. There's plenty of room around it, but I actually had better success because I have a top. I have one of the 200 millimeters on top as a giant intake. I actually ended up having a better airflow scenario using the front fans and the exhaust and dumping the heat out the front, because then it's not chucking into this hot box that has nowhere to go. So this is actually a rear intake, and it's one of the last ones in that case. All those fans that were in there were not ones I bought. They were all ones I had from other projects and builds and stuff. And I knew eventually, because they've been announcing for a while. I was like, oh yeah, once they come out with the new 120s, I'll replace that last one in there. And then they're all kind of updated. The only thing I might reach out to Noctua about doing a thing is I want to do like a string of 60s on the side panel as an intake in the bottom half, like where your GPU is. So on this side, intaking in through the side panel, and then on the right side, outtaking out through the top. Or the right side case. So intake from left side, outtake from right side. And I think I need 4 60 millimeters per. It'd be nice to have a little bit of a discount there, because that Noctua's like smaller, like more bespoke fans are not cheap. And I actually have quite a few of the 60 millimeters, but that's before they were PWM controlled. Now they're PW. You can even give them 5 volt if you want. But yeah, they put the paper in here because the tip clearance from the housing to the impeller is so skinny, right? That if they shipped it without the paper in there, it could shunt and hit it. And that would not be good. Like, you would actually wreck the fan. So they basically put this in there, this little paper cardboard, like it's like a sort of a cardstock insert in there. And until it uses, I'm not going to pull it out because I don't want to worry about it either. To maintain that ultra tight tip clearance. You can see it right there. I remember with the A12s, they were like a millimeter, I want to say. The A12 by 25s. I think the A14s, they might have said they're a 0.5 or maybe even less. It's crazy how close they are now. And the closer you can get that, and that's why I need that Sterox material because it needs to stay stiff even when it's under load, and then they purposely heat cycle it. Often they were saying I want to say they were doing it at least for a quarter, so like at least 3 months, if not 6. Their environmental chambers and the company they work with would test this to like speed up the wear of these to experience like closer what you would in real life over the warranty, like over the 8 years, or they say they usually even shoot for 10 equivalent, right? And without going to that Sterox, it would start to droop or shift, and that's part of what happened with the A14. The Sterox liquid crystalline polymer, they had to do both the frame and the blades in that. Otherwise, they would get the tips touching after, like say if you're in Thailand and you're using these, that constant heat would cause it to melt and waver, and they had to truly stress test this. So let's see here. We have the PPA, which is a 1750 RPM one. And I think the other one is PPB, I'd imagine. Yep, PPB. And I believe the stock ones are like the single box ones. I don't know if they say A on them. I doubt they will. Here, SSO2 bearing with magnetic stabilization. They say 150,000 hours. Metal shell also. That was a big thing back in the day. The F12s would always show their metal like it was a brass covering on them, to the point where other brands started doing that, and then even cheap fans started putting like metallized stickers over the back of their sleeve bearings to make them look like it. So like people would start recognizing like, oh, the metal bearing on the back. Here you can see a little whiff of it, right? That's a desirable thing. It's kind of back when like people would like a kind of a rough gauge on a good quality power supply was how heavy it was, right? So they but then some of the cheap, like the really cheesy brands would start like literally putting weights, maybe not lead weights, but like weights like zinc or whatever in there, because then that would make it feel more solid because it was heavier. That's what some of the knockoff fan brands were doing. Like some of them were legitimately having a metal encased bearing, or some of them were literally taking still a cheap bearing but putting an unneeded metal shell on it, right? Whereas in this case, it's literally sealing the back of the bearing in there. You can see here. And that is actually a real issue with these, like the lube actually would come out the back of the bearing. I actually had some, they're still in the test case with the Antec 300 that we use. I have some Swiftech Helix fans. All of the stickers on the back of all of those fell off because all the lube came out of the back of the fan. So I actually ended up popping the seal off, squirting. I think I probably just used like Tri-Flow or something. Who knows if that was good enough. And I just put electrical tape on it. The electrical tape has not come off since. But you know, those just had little plastic plugs instead of these metal bearings that like sealed from the inside out. That also is what makes it so you can't just pop off the rotors on these. Inside of here, we have a similar picture to the other guy. Scan for manual. Oh, they advertised inlet spacer, the IS1-12. That was on the other one too. I have used that before. Is if you have the space, the spacer does help. They're going old school with that. That's the sort of stuff that I used to do with my Scythe fans back before I switched to Noctua. That was back before there was, like Scythe was a good brand. Silverstone was a good brand. Like Silverstone was known for having ones that could go down to like 5 volt on your fan control because you have a voltage fan controller, not a PWM one. They had their, what are the penetrators, I think they were called. They actually had like built-in fan grills, and that's what you'd run in a silent build because they had their 180 millimeters. Back in that era is when you'd like, Noctua is really the one that brought back the corner grommets. Back then you would have full-on gaskets. Starting with the A12x25, you could get a full-on gasket. It could actually come with every fan. I believe they show on the bottom here that it comes with this one. But then now they even have like an inlet spacer. So what that does is on the inlet side of if you put this on the inlet side of a rad, instead of being flush here and the fans having to push right against that rad, right, the fins of the rad, you can just space it out that little bit more, and then that really helps with noise. Also can help with static pressure because they're not pushing, like there's a little bit of gap between the fan and the rad, or it can help with fan and case. I have them in the top of my personal build, Anthrax X Lite. Anthrax Lite. As one's an intake, one's an outtake, and just spacing it away, because even getting away from a fan grill can help. That's why they actually bump out the fan grill. If you look at a wire fan grill, which Noctua does make now too, which is really nice to see, because with like the likes of Frozen CPU, performance PCs, like a lot of those guys were like custom ordering, or they knew where you could get like quality fan grills. A lot of that is kind of like going away. The fact that Noctua's wire fan grills are like the thickest, most quality wire fan grills. They're like never warped. And I'm somebody that, I mean, you saw the U14S. I had a wire fan grill in the front, and you're like, why do you have that? Because I stick my fingers in fans. I'm often troubleshooting them when they're running, and I put my fingies where they're not supposed to, and they go, you know. So I and also just with, you're like, oh, so why would you need it? You have such good cable management. Yep. Well, I didn't always. Or also a lot of my stuff, sometimes I do need to. If you look in the repair PC, that's right over there. I have its SATA SSD that's used as a cache right now. Just kind of vibing on top of the hard drive cage because I didn't get an adapter yet. You know, with fangirls, I don't got to worry about that. Without fangirls, I got to worry about that. So that is why I use fangirls. The fact that Noctua makes some of the best ones that I've ever used, that you can either screw down or they give you like little rubber plugs in it so it doesn't rattle. Brilliant. Brilliant. But yeah, so I'm pumped to get this. That the chart that they're showing where it's that what is it, a 4C improvement at noise normalized, that's huge if that's true. The A14s by 25s were actually, noise especially is where those improved. The A12 by 25s or the Gen 2 ones, the A14s, were a definite improvement in noise. I also did see, and I told them this, I saw, and I don't have the numbers here, I probably have it in the video when I installed these, but with a C14, which is basically a U14S, except it's like, imagine the heat pipes here, and it's made into a C, so plates down here with a little heat sink on top, I think. And then the pipes go bendy, they're still a little bit longer, and then it's flat mounted, so it blows down. The reason why I have that is because I have a 200 mil up here. With that and a standard A14, right? Not the Gen 2, with a 5800X3D, it would just ever so slightly nip off that last 100 megahertz. And then because the X3Ds are so sensitive to any sort of throttling, any sort of movement, and you're like, well, why would it do that? Like a single 140 millimeter tower with 140 millimeter fan should be enough. Now, if I blasted that fan, it was enough. But if I wanted to keep it silent, which I do in the home theater PC, and in general, I like my PCs to be as quiet as they can be, it was not enough. However, I swapped that A14 fan for an A14 Gen 2. It's enough now. And some of you may not know like about the 5800X3, but it's weird because it runs hotter than, say, a 5800, but its TDP is lower because of the X3D. Right? I would also say because of the X3D, it uses more power when idling and in low power states and stuff like that. Now, it can't soak up as much because it can't turbo as much. They did later on enable the ability to like tweak and tune and make it like overclock it. I have only ever made it worse though by doing that. Just as a heads up, my recommendation is don't do that. This fan is when I switched that over to the A14 by 25 Gen 2, that was enough to take it that little bit more over, and even on what would be ASRock's normal fan profile, like once you've tuned the fans, I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but I think it's like 60% fan speed at 50C, and then like a certain percent at a certain C, it's pretty conservative. This solved it. Having this more performant, like if you look at this, here, can we look at this curve? There you go. This one is not as like across the board of an improvement as the A12 by 25. But in the middle, like as you go down into the more towards the airflow, you get that bigger benefit. But even there, smack dab in the middle, that's a pretty solid improvement. Like unless you're running it in a more statically pressure, then it doesn't have as much of an improvement over the first A14s. But I mean, it's an air, it's a heatsink, not a rad. It's not heavily dense. It's a C14. It's basically like a bent over version of that U14 by U14S. Imagine that. And I do have it in the pull side, not the push side. So that was enough to do that. Also, same thing with the U14S, when I had that on a 5800X3D, even upright with a single fan, it was not enough. Like a 140 millimeter tower with a single fan 140, not enough. The better fan did truly help. And I think we've seen that in similar coverage we've seen where a heatsink's a heatsink, you can improve it, right? But often that is why Noctua did not want to launch the D15 Gen 2 without the A14 by 25 Gen 2 fans. That's where the real improvement comes from. It's these guys. The air cooling heatsink is pretty figured out. You know, like the actual like towers and how you do it, and you know, a lot of I think Gamers Nexus, which like not end all be all. I think Linus did some testing with that old. Like they took the U12 and tossed on a A12x25 Gen 1, right? And they saw huge improvement gains, right? I know on Gamers Nexus 2, they tested the original D15 with the newer fans, and most of the improvement from that cooler comes from the fans. So that's what helped me out there, is like I said, I tossed it on there. Well, this guy's going in the home theater PC as the rear intake. Like rear intake? Yeah. Oh, I actually run quite a few of my builds in reverse. A lot of full-blown water cooling builds also can be done in reverse. These guys are going in Chibi PC. One has front intake and one is on the front of the fan. Something else you'll not see, which I'm going to go into the other room here. I think I hear a kitten meowing. There's her bag. And I think she got stuck in the workroom. Paisley Marie. Oh, who's that? Paisley? Yeah. This is for their desk fan. I don't even know if you can get these anymore. Noctua Home. This is their airflow amplifier for A12x25. Alright? Well, we're going to use it as an airflow amplifier for an A12x25 Gen 2. Right here is Chibi PC. Yeah, it's currently on top of the server. That's exactly how. And you might be able to see there. Yeah, that fan, that's on that D15 Gen 2, that front fan, because of the RAM in there, cannot go any lower. So we're going to stick a 120 mil in there and have that solved. Well, there's a big enough gap from that front fan there, that S12 Redux that's being used, to that fan, that I was thinking, what if we gave this bad boy, I know this is supposed to be on a desk fan blowing at you. What happens if we use that to direct airflow inside of a case? You know, you guys let me know if anybody you know has tested that down below. But that's what we're doing. And this is the TU-150. I did put the clod hoppers from Chibi PC's previous build in the TU-200 on here. These are some custom milled feet from MNPC Tech. I believe he's out of Detroit. The reason why I have two cases is I have a second solid side panel like this. Or this comes with a glass one. It was available with a second solid, but they're, like I said, by the time I bought this case, it was no longer being produced. And then with that case too, I'm going to send out the front of this to either MNPC Tech or I forget what the other modder is that I follow, and they're going to open this up, because as you can see, this sadly got stuck with that whole era of, yes, it's bumped out, but then you have all this mesh here on the side. You know, and this is Shmoo from Gertrude rubbing her face on it. But that's going to get sent out. And they, in that era, like if you look at the Fantex Evolve and Evolve, I think it was Evolve X, in that era, they all had, you know, like the S340 from an S4 or H440 and S340 from Fantex, or not Fantex, NZXT kind of started the whole solid front affair. And a lot of these after that, you know, got hit with that. But imagine this all nicely milled, maybe not the whole thing, but at least I think the front fans like in this region here, imagine that all nicely milled out with, like, you know, like screw holes, like, or drill holes like this, so it can get some proper airflow. So I'm going to send the second front that I have, or this one, whichever one's in better condition, out to get milled and drilled. And yeah, maybe we can see if we can put a filter in there as well, because oh, you've seen it around here. This little girly creates you create a lot of dust. Yeah, and dander and cat fur. Yeah, you won't admit to that, will you? But yeah, that's the plan. So one of these is gonna go in the front here. One of those is gonna go in there instead of that, so we can finally close the side panel. In the back there, we have a A12 by 20, by not A12 by 25, an A12 by 15 back there, and it just fits. Look at that. So we're gonna have push pull or push pull pull. And that front, we're gonna give this guy a shot. If it ends up not working out, I'll make it into a desk fan. But I think those, I'm not seeing them. Like, they're not really in stock anymore. A lot of their home stuff, which I thought it was interesting. I just didn't have a use for a lot of it. It was really, really highly specialized. Like the home theater PCs over there, if you need some fans for it, they had some rubber grommets and mounts that you could mount, like, and cut holes in the actual like furniture and stuff. But like that's stuff that I love, right? But that is super friggin' niche. Like, I could see Linus using that too, because he actually drilled using a hole saw in there. And they were not cheap because of that, because they knew they weren't making that many. So sad to see those go. If they did, maybe they'll restock. I do know for a lot of the stuff like this, I believe the plans for this, and now that my 3D printer is up and running, not here though, it's at the dad's with the brother, so I can just tell him to print me one of these. But a lot of the Noctua plastic stuff, same thing with the spacer. If you want that inlet spacer and you have a 3D printer, they have the designs up and available. You can just print your own. They're like, yeah, for something like that, we don't need to charge you if you can make it yourself. Like, what's the point? Like, we're literally making a plastic molding like this and shipping it around the world. That's not what we're here to do. You know, for those of you that can't make it yourself, or maybe you want it out of the squishy TPU instead of a hard plastic, and you know of a printer that can do that, like, we'll make it for you. But I'm really glad that they've expanded out to that, where it's kind of like, well, why are we shipping? Like, this thing weighs nothing, you know. Might even be something here's. Hopefully we're not cracked or something. Should probably check that months ago when I ordered that. But you know, I think we can kind of sneak it under there. Yeah, those wires will be sitting on top of it, but I mean, that CPU will be getting direct intake. I would like to, now that I have a different fan in here, do I get two of those A12 by 15s or A12 by 10s? I think they're 15s though. And sneak them in below that 3060 Ti? Do you think it's worth it? Or do you think that thing's pulling enough air from the bottom itself? Let me know, and hopefully I'll have a video of me installing it and pulling that bad boy out and getting a new rear fan in and stripping this down and getting it so I can finally get a... I am going to probably put the glass side panel on temporarily. Look at this kitten. What are you doing? Paisley Marie? Yeah? Alright. I think we're going to call it here. I'm really glad. I knew they would sell out, because last time when the hey, no sharpening. She's gonna do it again. Hey, what are you doing? This is your chair. You can't sharpen on it. Oh. We got another cat that wants some people time. What I was going to say is when the D15 Gen 2 came out, it sold out immediately as well. And that was what I didn't get in the first batch. What are you doing, kitten? What are you doing? I did, because of how quickly that sold out, once they had the fans available separately, I picked those up right away. So I'm glad I did that this time. Hey, you're being feisty. Look at that tail. She's being feisty. But yeah, if you guys do want Noctua products when they do come out, when they do finally release, you gotta hop on it. Now, they do restock as quick as they can. I don't know how quickly that's going to happen with the current tariffs. And I also don't know how much the tariffs played in that $35 fan price. And you saw each generation, they go up $5, it seems like. So $35, that can be chump change. Some of them are up 50, 60 if you want all that crazy digital RGB control. So working on getting this all labeled up nice instead of electrical tape. So maybe I use that for the mouse boxes as well. I think that turned out really clean with the black with the gold lettering. So you can't even really see that it's a label. I did leave the corners. Maybe I didn't have to do as much as that, but if I do want to peel it off, you can peel it. Because often the tools, until I get it exactly how I want it, a lot of the tools can be a little fluid as to where they're located. Look at this kitten. Kitten. We'll see you in the next one.